The little blue dot stopped moving at 1:12 a.m., and so did my breath. It sat there on the street grid like a bead of water on glass, stubborn, round, refusing to slide home. The map was turned to night mode, the city washed in navy with thin white nerves for roads. My kitchen was washed in refrigerator light and the quiet hum that lives between a woman and her suspicions. He had texted at 11:07, accident on 85, dead stop, phone dying. Then at 12:31, almost there. Don't wait up. The dot said otherwise. The dot said he wasn't moving. He hadn't moved in an hour, and he was nowhere near the highway. I didn't know a phone could feel heavy until mine did. I didn't know Google could be a witness until it turned and looked me in the eye. I didn't cry. The kettle clicked off, and I poured water over a tea bag I wouldn't drink. The steam bloomed and disappeared like it didn't want to be responsible for anything permanent. On the counter, the grocery list: milk, lemons, spinach, curled at the corner where a drop of collard water had dried. The clock above the stove clicked 1:17, a sound I'd never noticed until truth made everything louder. I pinched the bridge of my nose and let the quiet check my temper. I'm not a woman who shatters plates. I am a woman who keeps notes, who writes down confirmation numbers and the names of people who say, "Let me check on that for you." The dot had its own number. The address of a building I didn't know, on a street I'd never visited. A rectangle of roof lit by one lonely security light. I took a breath, tapped the little banner for details, and watched a neat, small sentence appear. Visited. 12:04 a.m. to now. I set the phone down like you set down someone else's baby. Careful, palms open. My hands wanted to do what mouths do when they forget they're calling. Instead, I wiped the counter in slow circles until the rag smelled more like lemon than anger. Around 2, a key turned. He walked in with that half-jog men do when they want you to count their effort. His shoes sounded guilty on the tile. He kissed the air between my cheek and my ear. "Traffic," he said, like it was a prayer that had always worked for him. 2 wrecks and a stalled truck. I nodded because nodding buys time. "Phone died," he added, lifting it as if it had fallen in battle. I said. My mouth did not ask a question that I didn't want to hear a lie for. He showered, left a damp wake of bergamot and hotel soap I didn't buy. Beside the sink, his watch face blinked a little too awake for a dead battery. He climbed into bed with the groan of a man who thinks he earned sleep. I stood in the dark kitchen with the kettle, the clock, the dot still glowing on the counter, and felt something fold inside me. Not a break. A crease for a future decision. My name is Lila. My husband is named Terrence when he's being himself, and Terry when he wants to be liked. We have been married 11 years, 8 of them good, 2 of them slippery. This one, the one of the blue dot, quietly trying to pick a fight with me. I've never been dramatic. Life has done that on its own. My father leaving before I learned to cook rice right, my mother working nights at the nursing home. My first apartment with roaches bold enough to turn on the light. I learned early that calm is cheaper than chaos. So I collect facts the way other people collect excuses. I put them in little folders in my head and in a blue binder on the shelf above the broom. Before all this, I loved my mornings. They are the reason I still believe in beginnings. I wake up before the sun, not from worry, from habit. I stand at the sink and watch the block come back to itself. Porch lights clicking out, the school bus sighing at the corner, Miss Jean's chihuahua giving up on its big bark. The coffee maker sighs like an old aunt settling into a pew. I like toast with too much butter and a little honey. Terrence likes eggs scrambled soft and peppered heavy. If he's home, he eats them fast with one shoe on, kissing the top of my head like I'm a lucky charm. I work as an intake coordinator at the city clinic. 3rd floor, door that sticks if you pull it instead of push. Smile ready before the person coming through has figured out whether to be ashamed or mad. I love forms, which is not a sentence you hear in joyful voices. I love them because they hold the lie still long enough for the truth to walk in. This date doesn't match this date. I say gently to a teenager who is braver than he knows, let's fix it. People think health is numbers and pills. Sometimes it's just somebody steady with a pen. Terrence sells fleet vehicles to companies with big logos. There was a time I could name all his clients because he came home talking about the days like they were puzzles he solved. He used to fall asleep smelling like new plastic and sunlight. When he got promoted to regional, the smell changed to hotels and rental cars and the lemon they use to wipe down surfaces in places that don't belong to you. He had a laugh the size of a conference room. It fit the life we thought we were building. A townhouse with a mortgage payment that made us sit down when we signed. A plant in the window that has tried to die and refused. A map on the wall with pins for trips we promised each other. We don't have children, not because we didn't try, because trying turned into timing, and timing turned into tests, and tests turned into a grief too expensive to keep paying. We laid that down together one Sunday afternoon, sitting on the floor with a pizza going cold, and promised each other we would still be a family even if it was just the two of us and a plant that finally decided to live. The first year after his promotion, I kept a little drawer of hotel shampoos because he thought it was cute to bring me the tiny bottles. We lined them up, laughed about which cities smelled like citrus and which ones smelled like chlorine. The second year, he stopped bringing them. "Babe, I don't want to make your bathroom look like a lost and found," he joked, and I laughed because we were still fluent in that language then. The night of the blue dot, I sat at the table and drew a little square around the address on a Post-it. Then I wrote the date, the time, and the text he had sent about traffic. I put the Post-it in the blue binder under Household Receipts. It didn't belong there. I kept it there anyway. I went to bed just before 3 and lay on my side of the mattress with my hands between my knees like a child learning to sleep alone. In the half hour before the alarm, my mind rehearsed 1,000 versions of a conversation I would not have. The kitchen theater where I throw the phone on the table and say, "Explain this." And he invents a cousin or a client or a sudden storm, the scene where I pack a bag with too much underwear and leave dramatically without my charger. When the alarm did ring, my body did what bodies do when the heart is unready. It stood up, brushed teeth, dressed, made coffee, cracked eggs. Terrence walked in wearing the shirt he swore he hadn't worn yesterday. He kissed my neck like apology and reached for a fork without looking at me too long. I watched him eat in 10 measured bites, the way a man eats on a schedule that doesn't include your feelings. "You still on for Charlotte next week?" I asked, like my voice had always been this smooth. Might be Raleigh, he said. Schedules are crazy. We're trying to squeeze in this fleet account before end of quarter. I nodded, wiped the counter, slipped the Post-it from the binder into my purse like a woman tucking a photo of herself she hasn't decided to show yet. When he left, the door clicked with its usual soft guilt. I put my coffee in a travel mug and walked out into a morning that smelled of cut grass and school bus diesel, the kind of smell that says everything is ordinary until it isn't. At the clinic, I checked people in whose lives had louder problems than mine. Blood sugar that wouldn't behave, a cough that hung around like a cousin who doesn't pay rent, a knee that used to run and now refuses stairs. The computer screens glowed their indifferent blue. I learned a new nurse's name and taught her how to unjam the label printer without cussing. At lunch, I ate leftover chicken over a sink because I didn't want the break room questions that kindness sometimes asks when you're not ready. All day, my phone sat face down on my desk. I didn't check the dot. I already knew where it would point if I did. On my way home, I drove past the address I had written on the Post-it, not all the way to the door, just up the block, where the sidewalk remembers all the feet that chose it. It was an old brick building freshly painted white, a thin tree out front pretending to be shade, the kind of place you rent when you think secrets need less space than love. I did not park. I did not circle. I kept going, the turn signal clicking like a patient metronome, and promised myself something I knew I could keep. I would not chase. I would collect. The street with the thin tree kept me company for 2 more drives that week. Never long enough for a neighbor to memorize my plates, never bold enough to roll past the curb. I learned its rhythm. A woman in scrubs stepping out at 6:10 with a lunch sack. A cyclist who always forgot his helmet and remembered halfway down the block. A porch light that clicked off at exactly 6:45, like it was on a timer set by someone who liked rules. What I didn't learn was how to swallow a blue dot. At home, I cooked like a person who trusts flour and heat. Cornbread, a pot roast that gave up its pride after 4 hours, green beans with bacon because some nights need a bribe. Terrence ate what I put in front of him and complimented the seasoning the way you compliment a stranger's outfit. Pleasant, distant, on your way somewhere else. Little things went loose. He started leaving his phone face down with the screen, brightness turned down so low it looked asleep, even when it wasn't. The charger by his side of the bed moved from the nightstand to the bathroom as if electricity worked better behind a closed door. He began announcing his showers. "I'm gonna rinse off," like an alibi. Comes with water. Once, as he towel-dried in the doorway, a notification from his watch traveled across his wrist too fast for me to read. My body didn't lunge. My mind made a shelf and labeled it patterns. On Wednesday, he called at 5:42 p.m., the time he usually drove home with the radio turned up to the sports show menus instead of conversation. "Running late," he said. "Client wants to see options. I'll be on the road by 7. Behind his voice, I heard a sound that didn't belong to a showroom, a high, soft beeping, the kind elevators make when they've been told to mind themselves. I'd know that sound anywhere. I spent half my 20s in buildings that made it. "Where are you?" I asked, keeping my tone like steam, present, dissolving on its own. He paused just long enough to make space for an alternative. "Warehouse," he said. "Loading bay." I said, and let the elevator go where it was headed. We share a family plan for music and cloud storage, not because we're tech people, because once, 2 years ago, his phone fell in a hotel hot tub and I logged into his Google to save his photos. He never changed the password. He never turned off location history either. It's funny the things a marriage forgets to tidy up. That night, I opened my laptop and the blue dot opened its mouth. It had a timeline. It had time stamps. It had a phrase I didn't know I'd dread. Most visited places. The address with the thin tree was number 2. Our home was number 1. I laughed out loud, the kind of laugh that tastes like nickel, because even Betrayal has the decency to be polite about rank. I didn't print yet. I watched. I scrolled a week back, then 2. The pattern was neat, like a man who folds shirts by the same line. Tuesdays, Thursdays, occasional Saturdays. Arrivals between 10:50 p.m. and 12:30 a.m. Departures between 5:20 a.m. and 6:15. On 3 nights, the dot arrived earlier, around 9, and left after midnight, skittered toward the highway, then turned around and returned to the thin tree street, like a moth that keeps choosing the porch light over the moon. I closed the laptop, set it under the placemat like a secret sandwich, and washed my hands until the soap smelled louder than the facts. At the clinic, I noticed things I didn't need to. A patient's new perfume reminded me of the bergamot in our shower that I didn't buy. A delivery man's key ring clanked like the fob Terrence started keeping in his pocket. A square gray thing with a split ring he didn't own last month. In my lunch bag, the apple bruised itself against the Tupperware because I forgot to eat it. I'm not a woman who loses weight from sorrow. I am a woman who goes very still and starts arranging drawers. On Friday, I pulled the credit card statements from the drawer where we keep stamps and ran my finger down the March charges. Hotels in Raleigh, Charlotte, and one downtown I could vouch for. His work had an event there, and I'd seen photos. 2 charges made my finger stop. Lotus Market, $34.17. Lotus Market, $12.98. I didn't know Lotus Market. I knew what $12.98 buys. I typed the name into the map. The thin tree street shrugged, like I should have known already. I didn't slam anything. I brewed tea. I watched the kettle fog the window in a small, honest circle. I set a small stack of blank paper on the table and made 4 columns. Date, time, location, source. I wrote what the dot said. I wrote what the card said. I wrote what my body remembered from his voice. I don't know if anyone else gets steadier when ink travels across white, but I do. It's like laying down boards across a muddy field. You may still slip. You won't sink. Saturday brought the kind of normal that dares you to argue with it. Laundry hummed. The neighbor's kid dragged a stick along the fence like a drum line. Terrence mowed the little rectangle of lawn we call a yard and waved to Mr. Santiago like a man with nothing to hide. He grilled chicken, handed me a plate, and kissed my shoulder. "You okay?" he asked, like the weather had been moody. "I'm fine," I said. Because fine is a life raft I know how to float on while I swim for shore. He mentioned Raleigh again. "Monday to Wednesday," he said. "Back Wednesday late, maybe Thursday if they add a dinner." "Drive safe," I said. "Text me when you stop." Phone might be low. He smiled and tapped his pocket like men do when they think you're teasing and you are but not the way. they think. I went to church Sunday and let the choir sing over my paperwork. When pastor talked about the difference between peace and quiet, I sat very still and pretended I didn't feel called by name. After service, Dot, my friend who can read my face like a bulletin, squeezed my elbow and pressed a peppermint in my palm. "For the drive," she said, "and for when you don't know what to say." I put it in my mouth like I could sweeten 4 days with sugar and oil. Sunday night, while Terrence snored like a clock in a different room, I opened my laptop and discovered a small gift from the universe. Export timeline. A button in the corner like it had always been there, waiting for courage. I clicked and watched it turn my week into a file, and my file into a download, and my download into something that could live on paper. I printed the week. Then I printed the month. The printer made that soft, forgettable hum, like a person telling the truth in a room that prefers charisma. Monday morning, he left at 6:30 with a duffel bag and the good cologne he saves for hotel mirrors. I stood at the door and hugged him the way you hug furniture when you're deciding if it fits the room. "Need anything?" I asked. "Nah," he said. "You're the only thing I need." He said it like you say grace because you were taught to. I waited 15 minutes after the garage door shut. Then I opened the glove compartment of his sedan because a woman can love and still want to know what paper a car is hiding. Registration, an old pair of sunglasses, napkins folded into squares, a thin white envelope stamped with a logo I didn't know. Arbor Place Residences. My stomach went cold in a clean way. I slid the envelope out with 2 fingers like it might be hot. Inside, a welcome letter with a resident portal login and a line that said, "Billing address 428 Chestnut. Our home. Service. Address, Aptee, 3B, 1149. Alder." The thin tree had a last name after all. I didn't scream. I didn't sink to the garage floor. I took a photo of the letter on my phone with the garage light making the paper look like it had secrets. And it did. I put the letter back exactly as it had been. I closed the compartment. I stood by the washer and listened to the tub fill, water beating the drum in a rhythm I knew from a lifetime of cleaning what people wear when they try to look okay. That afternoon, my toll transponder app pinged. Low balance. I opened it and saw trips at hours Terrence had supposedly been in bed or at dinners with men named Brad. I tapped statements and pulled up 3 months. The pattern of night crossings to the part of town where the thin tree lives. My pen didn't shake. It only squeaked when it reached the bottom of the page and wanted more room for truth. I called the Lotus Market while the printer cooled. "Hi," I said when a woman answered, her voice warm with the kind of tired that smiles anyway. "Do you sell prepared foods?" "Yes, ma'am," she said. "Hot bar till 8. Cold case till close." "Do you carry bergamot soap?" I heard myself ask, and then laughed, light as a person buying a memory. "Never mind. Thank you." "Have a blessed day," she said, and something in me bristled at how people throw blessing around like confetti. Then I thought about how I had been collecting paper like a dragon, and maybe I needed a little confetti too. I sat at the kitchen table and made another page. What I know without asking. I listed the blue dot. I listed the elevator beeps. I listed the letter in the glove box, the toll statements, the charges at Lotus Market. Then I made a line under it and wrote, "What I will not do. I will not drive to 1149 Alder and knock." I will not call the number in the portal letter and introduce myself to a leasing agent like a storm. I will not make my mouth a weapon and then have to live with the wreckage. I will not fight a woman. I don't know for a man who chose not to be found. I opened a new folder on my computer and named it August, Household. Inside it, I placed the timeline exports, the transponder statements, the photos of the glove box letter. On the shelf above the broom, I labeled a blue binder tab Household. Travel. The pen bled a little on travel. I didn't wipe it. I like seeing where effort gets honest. By evening, I had 2 piles, one for me and one for a woman I hadn't met yet, but knew I would. Not the woman at 1149 Alder, the one who wears suits like punctuation, the one who will say, "Let me check on that for you," and mean it. I set both piles side by side and laid a peppermint on top of each like a blessing I believed in again. The house sat with me the way houses do when they've overheard more than they wanted. The plant in the window leaned toward the last light. The printer sighed. The kettle took a breath it didn't need. I texted Terrence at 9. "Drive safe. Send me a pic when you stop." At 9:21, he sent me a photo of a hotel lobby chair and a TV tuned to a game I knew he wasn't watching. At 12:07, the blue dot took its seat under the thin tree. I turned the laptop around so it faced the wall. I went to bed and lay on my side of the mattress with my hands between my knees like a girl who knows where she is in the dark. In the middle of the night, the fridge compressor kicked on and the house hummed the lullaby it knows. I opened my eyes to the ceiling and said the quietest prayer I could find. Not fix him, not hurt her, just make me steady enough to carry paper to a door. That's mine. On Tuesday, the sky wrinkled itself into a steady gray, the kind that makes a city quiet down and think about its choices. I worked the morning clinic like a metronome. Check in, confirm address, verify insurance, smile. That means you're safe here. At 11:12, my phone buzzed with a bank alert that usually announces ordinary things. Paycheck in, power bill out. This one read, auto pay setup, Arbor, place, residences. The memo line named an account I knew by touch, our joint checking, the one with both our pay stubs braided together. I closed my eyes and let the room steady. 2 beats in, 2 beats out. It wasn't the money, it was the truth that borrowed my name. At lunch, I sat in my car and opened the banking app. The setup showed a recurring draft on the 1st of each month. I took a screenshot, then another of the routing number and the nickname of the payee, Arbor Place, apt 3B. As if he wanted his lies labeled like pantry jars. I emailed the images to my Household August folder and wrote one more line on the page I'd titled, What I Know Without Asking. He used joint funds to feed a place I do not live. Back inside, the label printer jammed, the way machines protest on days when humans need them to behave. I unrolled the sticky tape slowly until the thick clump that had been hoarding the path set itself free. "Come on now," I whispered like I do to baby truths. "Let's cooperate." At 3, Dot stuck her head in the doorway with a look that meant she'd decided to be useful. She held up 2 fingers and a coffee cup as if she were offering peace to a small country. 15 after my shift? She asked. I nodded before my pride could say it was fine. We met at the little cafe by the bus stop where the chairs wobble and nobody minds. Dot broke her muffin into precise halves and slid the bigger piece to my side. "I know you like the edge," she said. And I did. We ate like women who had to make time behave. I need a name, I said when my mouth had something sweet to stand on. The kind on the door that doesn't have a receptionist. Dot didn't ask, for what? A true friend lets your nouns be heavy without peeking inside. Amina Clark, she said. Family law. Doesn't posture. Thinks in verbs. I sent her cousin my way when the cousin's husband tried to move the retirement accounts with nobody looking. Does she listen? I asked. She listens like she bills, Dot said. Accurate. I smiled without showing teeth. Text me the number. Dot took my hand the way a person does when your palm has been holding papers all week. Whatever happens, you're made of good wood, Lila. I put the muffin edge in my mouth and let the sweetness sit there a minute, because truth needs sugar, sometimes, to go down, without burning. I called the number from my car. Amina's assistant answered with the kind of efficiency that believes a life is already on the line. Initial consult tomorrow at 10, she said. Bring documents. Bring only what you can prove. Bring your calm. I almost laughed. I have those. At home, I put the kettle on and laid out the piles. Timeline exports, toll statements, credit card charges, the glove box letter, the bank alert screenshots. I added a fresh page at the front, index. I numbered each packet. I slipped everything into clear sleeves. The binder clicked shut with a sound like a book telling the truth at last. At 6:08, my phone buzzed, running late, traffic. The blue dot on the laptop, though I hadn't asked it a thing, answered with its small, insistent glow from a part of town where traffic goes to sleep before the rest of us do. At 8:40, I tidied what didn't need tidying. The plant's leaves, the dish towel corners, the stack of junk mail bent into a deliberate rectangle. I set 2 mugs out because I wanted the table to remember we used to sit at it like partners. The key turned at 9:17. He came in damp with rain and the deodorant he wears when he wants to smell like a commercial. He did that half jog again, the one that looks like effort strapped to timing. He kissed the air near my face and set his keys in the bowl too gently, as if noise could confess. Accident on 85, he said, right on cue. I answered, right on mine. His eyes flicked to the table. 2 mugs, an empty chair waiting. He looked at me like a boy caught between detention and a basketball game. You okay? I made tea, I said. He sat with a carefulness that didn't belong to our kitchen. Everything all right? I placed the binder in the space between us like a placemat. I didn't open it yet. I folded my hands on top, laced my fingers, and looked at the man I had loved through furniture purchases and funerals, through dented fenders and full moons, and before I show you anything, I said, I want to offer you clean air. He frowned, confused and for a flicker, wounded. What does that mean? It means you can tell me anything right now, without me shouting, without me breaking a thing, without me making the next 5 minutes a movie. You can say a name, you can say a street, you can say the word apartment or mistake, or I've been unhappy and I will not make your mouth pay for the truth. This is the last minute for that kind of mercy. He stared at the mugs like maybe one had whiskey in it. Lila, I've been working. I nodded once, slow, like a metronome for liars. Is there anything you want to say to me that would benefit from being true? He swallowed. His jaw moved like a man choosing an exit. No, he said. I'm just tired. Okay, I said, and opened the binder. I moved like a clerk. Index first. Then Exhibit A, the Google Maps timeline. Dates, times, the caption that said visited 12:04 a.m. to 5:56 a.m. On top, I'd printed the little blue dot so it could stare at us both. He blinked slow, as if the page were bright. He rubbed his temple with his thumb and forefinger, then tried a smile I had once loved for its easy generosity. Baby, that's, sometimes my phone. Sometimes it throws a pin. GPS be crazy. You know how it is. I turned to Exhibit B. Toll transponder statements. 3 months lined up with nighttime crossings toward Alder. Exhibit C. The bank alert screenshots. With Arbor Place residences, autopay in clean font, the joint account circled with my neat pen. Exhibit D. The welcome letter from the glove compartment, service address. Apt 3B 1149. Alder, billing address our home, his name in the corner like it had wandered there by accident, and found a chair. Exhibit E. 2 charges at Lotus Market on nights he'd been too tired to talk. His throat worked. He touched the edge of the welcome letter like maybe it would forgive him. It's not like that, he said. Then what is it like? My voice came out steady the way the ocean can be steady even when it's deciding to change the shore. It's a crash pad, he said quickly, relief blooming in his face as if he'd found a noun he could live with. For work, sometimes the drive, sometimes it doesn't make sense to... He lifted his hands like he was placing little invisible boxes on a shelf. The company, they know about it. I needed a place to what? I asked softly. To rest? To hide? To become a man I don't know? His shoulders rose and fell. He didn't say no. I flipped to the last page I'd added while the kettle boiled, a single line of handwritten math. Joint account, Arbor Place. I slid a pen on top of it like a gavel dressed as a utensil. You used our money, I said, and the kitchen understood it had just heard the real confession. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again with the smallest sound like a door hinge that hasn't been oiled because someone swore it wasn't squeaking. He stopped. I let the quiet sit. It didn't judge. It only told the truth with its hands. Is there a name? I asked. Not because I needed to punish it with my mouth, because I needed to know whether I was standing in a triangle or just a long, lonely line. He stared at the steam lifting from my mug. It's not... He tried to pick a word that made him a victim of gravity. It's complicated, he said. She was someone I knew from before the promotion, when things were... I held up a hand, palm soft, not to shush his mouth, to rescue it. I'm not the woman you recast your history for, I said. I'm the woman who is going to make sure my future is a place I recognize. He nodded like nodding could build a bridge out of a hole. I have an appointment tomorrow morning at 10, I said. Family law. I will go with or without you. If you come, you will tell the truth with your government name. You will bring your pay stubs, your mileage logs, your corporate card statements, and any lease documents tied to Arbor Place. Tonight you will sleep in the guest room. You will put your phone on the dresser like a man who understands he is not entitled to privacy while claiming secrets. His eyes flashed a flare of anger, the first honest heat I'd seen on him in months. So you just decided, he said. You built a case. I built a path, I said. You're welcome to walk it. He pushed his chair back an inch, the legs rubbing the floor like they wanted to leave too. Lila... He reached for my hand, and I let mine rest on the table where it belonged. His fingers stopped, then retreated. and he nodded like a man who'd just met a line he didn't want to cross because it would cut him. "What do you want me to say?" he asked. "The truth," I said. "And when you don't have that, silence." He stood, took the spare pillow from the linen closet, and walked down the hall like the house was unfamiliar. At the doorway to the guest room, he turned, and for a half-second, the boy in him, shy, hopeful, unpracticed, came and went. "I'm sorry," he said it like a person holding a cup too small for the thirst in the room. "I hear you," I said. I didn't add but. I let the sentence be exactly what it was. Air moving. After the door clicked, I sat with the binder and the peppermint dot had pressed into my palm. I unwrapped it and let it rest on my tongue until the cool crowded out the heat long enough for my lungs to do their job. The plant made its small night silhouette against the streetlight. Somewhere outside, a neighbor's car alarm chirped twice and then thought better of it. I cleaned the table like I do when I need a surface to match my insides. I set one mug in the sink and left the other where it was. A little steam still climbing like a prayer that has no demands, only shape. "Morning will come," I told the room, "and when it does, we will take our papers to a woman who knows what to do with them." Morning came with a sky the color of copy paper and a house that didn't know where to put its sounds. Terrence moved in the guest room like a man practicing being small. Drawer eased open, zipper pulled slow, toothpaste squeezed quiet. He didn't come to the kitchen. He didn't ask if I wanted coffee. He left at 7:10 and the door clicked like it had learned to apologize. I dressed for steadiness, navy dress, low heel that doesn't wobble. The pearl studs my mother bought the first year I could afford to pretend I didn't need gifts. I slid the blue binder into a tote and tucked a peppermint in the pocket like a signature I could suck on if my name started to shake. On the table, the plant leaned toward a square of light, and I told it I would be back. Amina's office sat on the second floor of a brick building that used to be a bank before people decided the internet could hold their money. The hallway smelled like paper and eucalyptus. The doorplate said her name in letters that didn't shout and still got heard. Inside, the receptionist looked like calm in lipstick. She handed me a clipboard with 3 pages that asked smart questions in ordinary words. Have you felt unsafe? What do you want most to protect? What would you call success? Water or tea? She asked. Water, I said, and she gave me a glass as if hydration had a purpose more holy than thirst. Amina came out at 10 on the dot with a legal pad and a pen that looked like it could afford to be refilled. She was small in the way gravity respects, hair braided close, suit the color of rain, shoes that meant business and mercy at once. She shook my hand like a person measuring pressure on purpose. "Lila," she said, and made my name sound like an agreement. We sat in a room with a window that looked at trees instead of traffic. She didn't open her pad yet. She waited the way a good doctor waits for the patient to decide whether to name the pain or point to it. I set the binder on the table between us and opened the index. "I brought paper," I said. "I didn't bring a performance." She smiled with only half her mouth. "That's my favorite kind." I moved through the exhibits the way I'd rehearsed. Timeline, tolls, charges at Lotus Market, glovebox letter, bank alert screenshots. I didn't hurry. When I finished, I put both hands flat on the table so my wrists didn't try to tell a story my throat wasn't ready for. Amina turned a few pages over, scanned like a woman who knows how to borrow eyes from her future self. She made a small mark next to the bank alert, another at the welcome letter. Her pen made a sound like silk on paper. "First," she said, "I'm sorry you have to be here." "I'm grateful to know where here is," I said. She nodded. "All right, I'm going to give you a menu. We can order one item or several. You can change your mind about dessert." I smiled because she made me hungry for cents. "Option 1," she continued, "is information. We serve preservation notices to the bank, to Arbor Place, and to your husband, telling them not to delete or alter records. We request the lease, the application, the occupant list, fob logs, if the building uses them, and the payment ledger. We get a better picture of who is sleeping under that roof and on whose dime." "Fob logs?" I asked, tasting the words. "Electronic keys," she said. "Buildings keep their own diaries." I thought of the elevator's obedient beep in his phone call and nodded. Option 2, financial triage. Close or freeze joint credit where appropriate. Open an individual checking account in your name only. Redirect your direct deposit and revoke your consent for joint funds used toward any residence where you do not live. We inform the bank in writing. If an autopay pulls after that, the record helps us prove dissipation, money spent on anything but the marriage. Dissipation, I repeated, tasting that word too. It's the legal word for a hole in a bucket your spouse is pretending is a feature, she said. Option 3, boundaries with teeth. Temporary orders for exclusive use of the house. No strangers at the marital residence. No new debts without joint consent. And a ban on destroying or hiding electronic data. If you want to stay married and repair, we can build a post-nup with terms that value your calm. No contact clause, termination of the lease, transparency with devices and accounts, therapy with a clinician who does more than nod. "And if I don't want to stay?" I asked. My voice didn't tremble. The question stood on its own legs. "Then we file," she said. "We let the court ask the questions you've been too polite to. We hold him accountable for your half of any joint money that moved to that apartment. We divide, we protect your credit, and we set you up to sleep in a house that isn't waiting for keys that don't belong there." She put her pen down. "You don't have to choose today." "I already chose one thing," I said. "I chose paper over posture." I took a breath. "I want option 1 now, option 2 by supper, option 3 ready to reach for. The file?" I touched the binder. "Should never be braver than my body, but right now it is." "That sentence," Amina said softly, "belongs on a wall." We drafted 3 letters while I drank water I didn't know I needed. She read each aloud in a voice with no tremor. "This is a preservation notice." She slid them across for my signature. I wrote my name like I was signing for a package that contained breath. "Do you want him here for any of this?" she asked. "Some spouses come to the consult. Some don't." "I offered him clean air last night," I said. "He chose weather." "Then we don't wait on his umbrella." She made me a list in her square, unfancy handwriting. It looked like a recipe you could live on. Open solo account, redirect paycheck, remove autopay, change cloud passwords, freeze credit, inventory home, photograph valuables, copy tax returns, don't have conversations you aren't recording on paper. "Recording?" I asked. "Emails," she said. "Texts. Letters. No yelling in kitchens. If he wants to tell truth, he can write." I left with a folder of our letters, a retainer agreement I would sign after reading twice, and the strange lightness that comes when a stranger says the words your bones were waiting for. You're not crazy. You're prepared. Outside, the air smelled like wet bark and hot cement. I sat in my car and let myself cry the way polite people do. Quiet. Turned a little to the side, like I'm sparing the steering wheel. The tears were neat as beads. They stopped on their own. I texted Dot. "She's good." Dot replied with a heart and the words, "Steady hands, steady hearts." I drove to the bank because the list told me to, and lists have saved me more than men have. The lobby was hushed and pretend rich. A young man in a navy tie asked how he could help, and I said, "I need to open an individual checking, redirect my direct deposit, and revoke authorization for a payee." He blinked and sat up straighter like he'd been waiting for someone to use bank words correctly. "Do you have identification?" he asked. I handed him two. Names matter most when they've been borrowed. Back home, I made tea and logged into everything with my name on it. I changed passwords, turned on two-factor like a woman who believes in second locks. I opened the payment settings and removed Arbor Place from the joint account. I left the screen up long enough for the confirmation email to arrive. I printed it and slid it behind the bank alert in the binder. The pages made a sound like agreement. At 4:30, Amina's assistant called. "Arbor Place acknowledged, bank acknowledged, husband served by email and text," she said, the rhythm of efficiency in her voice. "We'll send a physical letter by certified mail for the paper trail." "Thank you," I said, and meant it like I'd been thirsty. At 5:12, Terrence texted from the guest room like we were neighbors. "Can we talk?" "On paper," I replied. A minute later his message arrived. "I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you. I made a mistake. It's not serious. I can end it." I typed slow. "End it. Terminate the lease. Provide proof. Bring pay stubs, corporate card statements, mileage logs, and all keys to the apartment to the kitchen table at 8 p.m. tonight. We will photograph and copy. Then you will sleep in the guest room again." He didn't reply for 6 minutes, and then, "Okay." I put my phone face down. I set out 2 manila envelopes, 3 sticky notepads, and a black pen that writes like butter. I made space on the table the way you make space on an altar. The house went very still, like it was about to watch a surgery. At 7:59, Terrence walked in with a file box that looked borrowed from a supply closet. He set it down with care, as if paper could bruise. I didn't look at his face. I looked at the truth he brought and the truth he didn't. We worked in silence. He handed me pay stubs and I marked them with pink flags. He slid over corporate statements and I marked the Lotus Market charges without speaking the name. He placed mileage logs on the table and I matched dates to tolls. When I asked for the lease, he said, "I don't have a copy." "It's okay," I said. "The building does. And now, so does my lawyer." He swallowed, a dry sound. He reached into his pocket and placed 2 keys on the wood. One belonged to our house. One had a gray fob I recognized from a call I hadn't been in. I photographed both, then put the house key back in his hand and the fob in an envelope with his name on it. "Return this to the landlord," I said. "Request a written confirmation of termination. Send me the letter when you have it." He nodded. "Lila, I held up a hand, not to punish, to pause. "No kitchen speeches, not tonight." We finished before 9. He went back down the hall with the empty file box like a man who has learned the weight of things he can't carry for free anymore. I sat at the table with my pen and my peppermint and wrote a sentence at the bottom of my index page. When truth comes, make it comfortable, but do not let it move in without paying rent. The plant in the window made its patient shadow on the wall. Somewhere outside, somebody laughed in the lazy way of people who don't know a house has changed its verbs. I washed the mugs. I turned off the light. I let the dark be the kind that rests, not the kind that hides. The next morning, my email made the sound of a spoon in a glass. Bright, small, surprised at its own importance. Subject: Arbor Place, documents attached. Amina had forwarded the packet with a single-line preface. Buildings keep diaries, like I said. I opened the PDF and breathed the cool of fluorescent offices. The lease spelled itself in 12 pages of polite rules and small teeth. Lessee Terrence M. Coles, occupant, non-lessee, M. Lane. No full first name, just an initial and a word as thin as it wanted to be. The move-in date walked hand in hand with the month the blue dot started sleeping under the thin tree. The payment ledger showed drafts from our joint account, mine and his, like a fingerprint picked up with Scotch tape. The fob log Amina had requested read like a clock learning to confess. Entries at 10:57 p.m., 12:11 a.m., 5:42 a.m., paired across 2 serial numbers. One for the gray fob I'd photographed, one ending in 7C assigned to M. Lane. Amina's note followed, tidy as a grocery list. 1. Will serve a dissipation notice today. Any future payments for 3B must come from his separate funds. 2. Early termination fee exists. We will not pay it. 3. Because the occupant is listed, a notice will be posted to the unit door concurrent with non-renewal or termination. This creates its own clarity. 4. Do you want a no-contact letter to Ms. Lane, or will you let the building's process do the talking? I typed, "No contact from me, please. Let the building speak its own language." "Done," she replied, one word that put my lungs back in my chest. By lunch, an email to both Terrence and Arbor Place had left Amina's desk with 3 attachments and 6 sentences that could hold a house steady. It said no joint funds, it said preserve records, it said termination must not use her money, it said we are watching without yelling. I didn't forward it to anyone. I printed it for the binder and slid it beneath the lease where it could be a floor if the room started to tilt. At 3:07, my phone buzzed in the clinic hallway with a message from an unknown number that sat in my palm like a bee. "Hi, this is Maya. Can we talk?" I looked at the tiny name, at the letter M I'd just met in a PDF, and I felt my heart reach for a weapon it doesn't carry. I typed 3 words I could live with in court and in church. "Please contact counsel." Then I blocked the number, laid my phone face down on the intake desk, and called the next patient with a voice that didn't borrow a single tremor from my other life. By evening, the building had done what buildings do when you tell them the truth out loud. Amina texted a photo from the property manager. Notice of intent to terminate, non-renewal, taped to a white door I didn't own. You could see a sliver of a rug. A pair of women's flats turned in like they'd been talking all day. The notice read what notices always read: dates, balances, rules about keys that had to come home. It asked for signatures. It put a timer on the room where Liz had slept like they belonged. At 6:22, Terrence's name lit my screen. "She knows," he wrote. They posted a paper. She's upset. She's threatening to call my boss. I stared at the message until my anger melted into something oddly merciful. Pity, maybe, for everybody who had believed a secret could be held by two hands for long. "Handle your business," I replied, without using mine. 3 minutes later, "Can we keep this between us? Please." We were already not us. I let the silence carry my answer. The public thing didn't arrive as a spectacle. It arrived as a series of small acknowledgments that added up like receipts at the bottom of a purse. Dot texted, "Praying hands." "You don't need to tell me. I can see the new math on your face." Keisha, his sister who loves loud colors and straighter lines, called about her daughter's birthday Sunday and paused in a space where greeting cards usually live. "You coming?" she asked finally. "I'd like for you to come. He can come if he wants to be a father to his niece, but I asked you." Her voice was a rope tossed from one boat to another. "I'll be there," I said, and meant it without measuring whether he would be. At the party, the kitchen smelled like sugar and 5-year-old joy. Keisha pressed a plate of cake into my hand and kissed my cheek like laying a hand on a hot forehead. Her eyes did the thing good family eyes do. They scanned my soul without making a fuss. "I know," she said in a whisper that held its own balance. "I told him Tasha and me weren't going to play dumb at Thanksgiving." "I appreciate you," I said. And I did. Public consequence doesn't have to be a town square. Sometimes it's a sister saying out loud what the whole house knows. Terrence showed up late, chin low, shoulders squared with the lost nobility of men who believed their charm could write history. He handed his niece a bright bag with tissue that looked expensive and hugged Keisha like a penitent who'd learned a script. When he reached me, he stopped a foot away, palms open, eyes brimming with the math he couldn't solve. "Lila," he said too softly for the room. "Hi," I answered, the syllable simple and exact as a measurement. He moved away, orbiting without entitlement, and I let him keep his distance. People watched with the polite curiosity of cousins who don't need details to take a side. No one confronted. No one gossiped. Justice can be a room, refusing to protect your comfort. The building did its part without appetite. 2 days later, Amina forwarded an email from the property manager. Keys for FOB, 7C and FOB 5A were deactivated at resident's request. Confirmation of receipt attached. The little ledger at the bottom showed last entries for both. 7C, 3:19 p.m. 5A, 3:21 p.m. I imagined the sound the door made that afternoon when it understood it would open for fewer people from now on. Corporate consequences arrived like a thunderstorm that didn't care where your picnic blanket was. A compliance officer CC'd Amina on a terse email to Terrence. "We have received a request for travel and reimbursement records in connection with a legal matter. Please preserve all company data and cease personal use lodging billed to the corporate card immediately. HR will schedule a review." I didn't gloat. I thought of the mortgage and the plant and the soft hand towels I'd bought on sale. I didn't want him unemployed. I wanted him honest. He leaned in the kitchen doorway that evening in his shirt sleeves, the file box visible like a bad dream behind his knees. "They know," he said. "At work." "I saw," I said. He rubbed the back of his neck like a man checking a thermometer. "You trying to ruin me?" "I'm trying not to let you ruin me," I answered, light as a spoon on a saucer. He nodded the slow nod of a man hearing a better sentence than his. "Amina Emailed me, he said, not able to say your lawyer without admitting what that meant. She wants me to sign the dissipation acknowledgement. Then sign it, I said. And mean it. He stared at the countertop, at the line in the wood where heat had lifted the grain. Maya. She called me at work, crying. His voice cracked on the letter, small and uncool as a child's confession. She said I lied to her too. You did, I said gently. One lie can afford more than one house. He swallowed. She said I told her we were done. Months ago. I thought of how many times men draft new histories under borrowed roofs. She deserves the truth, I said, but I am not the place you deliver it. He nodded. He went very still. Pastor asked to see me, he added after a long minute. He called, said he'd seen my face at Keisha's like a weather report. His smile was crooked, cheap. It slid off his mouth. He wants us both to come. Schedule it, I said. Put it in writing. I'll be there. We sat with Pastor and Dot in a room the color of lemon oil and old prayers. The blinds made kind shadows on the wall. Pastor didn't wear his robe. He wore the starch of a man who knows paperwork is holy too. He let Terrence speak first, and I listened without composing my response. He cried, not like a confessional, but like a man finally too tired to keep holding the pose he'd been striking. He said words I'd wanted a month ago and didn't want now. Lonely, overwhelmed, stupid, sorry. He said I thought I'd come home before it mattered, and the sentence tucked its tail between its legs like it knew what a coward it was. When he finished, Pastor didn't swing a verse at us. He nodded at the binder in my lap. Yes, I brought it. And asked Terrence to look at it the way you look at a photo album of a family you don't get to keep without work. She chose paper over fire, he said. God bless the choice that preserves a room. We agreed to a list that sounded like spring cleaning but felt like truth. Individual counseling for him, couples counseling for us if I wanted it after 3 weeks. Immediate termination of the Arbor Place lease with proof to both Pastor and Amina, no contact with Maya, outside logistics handled by email, accountability meetings with Keisha on Thursdays. My choice, because married is communal, even when it's private. Terrence signed. The ink looked heavier than gravity. On the way up, Dot put her hand over mine. You did good, she said. Not perform good. Bone good. That's all I wanted, I said, and looked up at a sky that had stopped wrinkling and decided to be clear. The parking lot smelled like hot dust and cut grass. The world did not clap. It just kept being a world where sometimes people tell the truth with their whole mouth. Back at home, the plant had turned one leaf toward the street, one toward me. I watered it like I was participating in a joint custody agreement with the living. My phone buzzed on the counter. A calendar invite from Terrence for counseling, another from HR for compliance review, a read receipt from Amina. Dissipation acknowledgement signed. Termination fee to be paid from his separate funds. Keys surrendered. I didn't dance. I didn't collapse. I put the kettle on and wiped the counter in slow circles until the lemon crowded out the day. The printer coughed and settled. Somewhere across town, a door learned it wouldn't open for a gray fob anymore. The apartment key came home in a plain envelope, the kind that makes no promises, the kind the mailman slides through the slot without looking up. Amina forwarded the confirmation. Termination processed. Balance zeroed. Both fobs surrendered and deactivated. She added a line that read like blessing without religion. Close the file when your body says so, not just your lawyer. HR didn't fire Terrence. They put him on a plan with words like compliance and ethics and reimbursement audit. The company card went quiet like a mouth that had learned the cost of speaking wrong. He emailed me receipts without being asked. He sent screenshots of canceled reservations and a photo of an empty closet, white wire shelf holding nothing but a shadow. He went to counseling on Tuesdays and came home with eyes that had been sweating. We met the couple's therapist 3 times in a room with 2 chairs that didn't touch. She had a way of asking questions that put your hands in your lap. "What do you want to repair?" she asked him. He said, "Everything." She said, "Name one thing." And he said, "Her breath when she sleeps," and the sentence found the spot in me that remembers mornings. I didn't rush to forgive. I let days stack like clean plates. I learned I could love someone and still prefer my own company at night. For a while, he stayed in the guest room out of respect for a door that had agreed to keep me. We made a plan bigger than apology. It had chores and dates and passwords and a shared calendar that didn't pretend spontaneity was safer. We split our money for now. His account, my account, a slim joint pot for the mortgage and light that keeps a house from feeling abandoned. He offered transparency without theatrics. "You can look," he'd say, handing me his phone like a cup of water. Sometimes I did. Sometimes I didn't. The choice tasted better than the proof. Maya wrote once through Amina, a brief letter that carried more exhaustion than defense. She said she hadn't known about me the way she should have, that he told a different story in a room I've never stood in. She said she was moving. I didn't reply. Not from cruelty. From discipline. My peace is not a town square. Keisha kept me on her calendar the way sisters do when blood isn't the only thing that counts. On Thursdays, Terrence sat at her kitchen table with a legal pad while she stirred a pot and asked him questions that couldn't be answered with charm. "What did you think I do included?" she'd say, and he'd put his head in his hands and breathe. I never stayed for that. That was their work. Pastor kept us both honest. On Sundays, he'd nod from the pulpit at no one and both of us. "Peace ain't quiet," he'd say. "It's the sound truth makes when it sits down and stays." I stopped flinching at the word marriage. I started hearing verbs again. Keep, ask, tell, return. The plant in the window did what living things do when trouble leaves a room. It grew. A new leaf unfurled like someone making up their mind in public. I watered it in small circles, the way I wiped the counter when I needed a ritual that didn't ask questions. I cooked again, not to bribe a night into behaving, but because onions in a pan smell like home, and a woman deserves that even when she's the only one eating. The binder went back on the shelf above the broom, still blue, still honest. I didn't hide it behind something prettier. I just let it rest where practical things live. Flashlights, extra batteries, the tape that makes packages official. Some nights I would take it down and touch the spine like a scar you don't hate because it means you healed. One evening in late fall, Terrence stood in the doorway of the kitchen with bare feet and a face that had lost its campaign. He didn't reach for me. He let the air do its own work. "It's been 90 days, he said, because the therapist liked, and numbers you could circle. I haven't earned anything, I know that, but I want to ask." He swallowed. The house listened. "Can I come home?" he asked quietly. Not just to the mortgage, to you, and if the answer is no, tell me how to live in the no without breaking what we rebuilt. The kettle clicked, and I poured water over tea I planned to drink. I thought about the blue dot and the night it stopped moving. I thought about letters and locks and the clean arithmetic of a fob that no longer opened what it used to. I thought about how his sorry had stopped performing and started showing up. Meetings kept, receipts sent, doors respected, Tuesdays honored. You can move your pillow back, I said. Your pride has to stay where it is. He nodded. A man eager to say more and old enough not to. We slept back to back like two people remembering a choreography their bodies still knew. In the dark, he reached for my hand under the sheet, like a question he wasn't owed the answer to. I let our fingers rest in the little valley between us. Warmth, not absolution. It was enough for a Wednesday. Weeks continued. We didn't fix. We practiced. We cooked and paid bills and took separate walks that ended at the same door. We laughed again, the quiet kind that doesn't ask the room to join. Some days I woke up with peace like a second blanket. Some days the old anger scratched the window to see if I would let it in. I'd make tea and wipe counters until Lemon beat it back. A marriage, I learned, isn't a wedding photo. It's a series of small decisions you make when nobody's filming. I told my mother the bones of it over the phone, and she sighed a sigh from the decade where women carried everything. You did good, she said, then corrected herself. You did right. I liked the difference. Winter brought ordinary gifts, a sale on good towels, a coupon for the grocery store, a cough that wore us both out and passed like weather. In February, I took the binder down one last time and moved a few pages to a thinner folder labeled Closed. I left the rest. Timeline exports, tolls, the glove box letter as they were, not to haunt us, to honor the woman I was at that table, steady hands, peppermint on her tongue, deciding to be a witness for herself. On a Saturday morning when the light came in clean, and the plant threw lace on the wall, Terrence set a mug by my elbow and touched nothing else. I know you don't want speeches, he said, but there's a word I learned in counseling, repair. It doesn't mean forget. It means stitch what can be stitched. I want to stitch every day. Then thread your needle, I said without looking up, and he smiled at the sink like a man grateful for work. If you're listening to me now in your own kitchen light, maybe with your own blue dot somewhere you didn't invite, hear this part clearly. You don't owe anyone a performance. You owe yourself a record. Choose. Paper over posture. Choose rooms where truths can sit without knocking. Choose peace that makes noise when it needs to, and if you stay, let it be because boundaries held, not because silence did. If you go, let it be because you love yourself more than the idea of being chosen. That night, rain took its time on the roof. We turned off the TV and let the house speak in hums, refrigerator, distant tires on wet, the sigh of something settling that has finally decided to stop resisting gravity. We lay facing the same way, our hands meeting in the middle like a treaty signed daily. I got up once to make tea I didn't need and stood by the sink with my palms on the cool edge. The city looked back through the window. Porch lights, a bus breathing at the corner, a neighbor in a robe rescuing a trash can. Ordinary salvation. I touched the binder on the shelf and left it where it belonged. The lemon cloth hung itself to dry. "I'm here," he said from the doorway. Voice low. Not a promise. A location. "I know," I said, not a pardon. A map. We turned off the last light together. The dark was the resting kind. Would you have stayed? Would you have called or collected? If this story steadied something in you, tell me in the comments. Your wisdom helps more than you know. And if you want more quiet, real stories like this about betrayal, receipts, and repair, subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss the next one. If you'd like to support these long episodes, a super thanks keeps the kettle on and the stories coming.